In the early days of gaming, licensed games played a much bigger role than they do today. With so much less content available to view, it was a sure bet that the biggest movies and cartoons of the year would also spawn the toys we wanted, the Halloween costumes we wore, and even the video games that we played. In the late 80s and early 90s, Batman was as big, or even bigger, than he is today. The Adam West 1960s cult classic TV show Batman was in syndication all over the country. The classic movie, often referred to as Batman '89, brought the superhero to the big screen in a huge way. There were toys, and there were extremely successful video games based on the movie. Inevitably, 1992 saw its sequel, Batman Returns, once again starring Michael Keaton as Batman. This time, however, they brought in Danny DeVito as Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Once again, the toys and the video games based on the movie hit the shelves. People couldn't wait to try on the mantle of the Bat one more time. If you had a Sega Genesis, though, you might have been tempted to hang up the Bat suit and sit this one out. Sega's version of Batman Returns is once again a side-scrolling platformer that starts immediately after the Ice Queen falls to her death at the hands of Penguin. Once again, Batman appears to be a purple color, most likely to make him stand out against the dark and moody background colors that they chose to fit the movie's atmosphere. Interestingly enough, many of the backgrounds in the game are also a purple color, making Batman blend into the scenery almost as bad as if they had just made him black or gray anyways. That's my only real complaint about the graphics here. Most of the visuals represent Tim Burton's dark and gritty vision of Batman pretty well. The real problem with the game is definitely the controls and the gameplay. Batman controls like an absolute tank, and while I can respect that they probably were looking to capture Michael Keaton's slower, more methodical version of The Dark Knight, it still doesn't make for a very fun video game. Now you take the stiff, tank-like controls and you throw in relentless enemies that come at you off screen from every angle imaginable, and you're in for a frustrating ride indeed. It's impossible to hit enemies coming in too high or too low, and Michael Keaton's reflexes are probably as good today as they were in Batman Returns the video game. You're gonna take damage. You're gonna take a lot of damage. Even more frustrating at times can be the trial and error of finding out what platforms Batman can actually grapple to and land on versus what's just background and what will make you fall to your death. The tank-like controls even come into play here, as Batman specifically has to look up and then use the grappling hook. If you try to do both at the same time, he just stands there like an idiot. And while I can always appreciate developers who make the background somewhat interactive, it's never good to actually have action in places that you can't even see. I think what they were looking for was to make a game that played like a slow-moving platformer that took some thought, such as Super Ghouls and Ghosts, or maybe even Flashback, but what they really ended up with were enemies and situations that just come across as cheap instead of complex or thought-provoking. All in all, while Batman Returns on Genesis certainly isn't the worst game in its library, the real kick in the pants comes when you take a look at the Super Nintendo version of the game and realize what Sega owners could have had. Made by Konami, Batman Returns on the SNES is everything a fan could want from a Batman game. Fast-paced fights, cinematic cutscenes that actually followed the plot of the movie, boss fights straight out of the film, and gorgeous destructible backgrounds. And listen to this, the SNES version even has the dark and frantic music cut straight out of the movie, whereas aside from the intro, the Genesis version at times has a generic disco-sounding theme that sounds like it was intended for Saturday Night Fever the movie, the game. Now, I know, not everyone is a fan of beat-em-up games, but come on. If you had to pick the game that actually felt like a blockbuster movie, I'm pretty sure you would pick the Super Nintendo version. Oh yeah, and did I mention? There's a Batmobile stage. No, it's not perfect, and it feels like every other Mode 7 vehicle stage on the SNES, but hey, at least it's there, and it adds some more cool factor to the game. So let's answer that question. Is Batman Returns on Sega Genesis really that bad? Yeah, actually it is. Like I said, When you add in the fact that the Genesis version is about $10 and the SNES version is only around $20, this one's a no-brainer. Stay with Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo. Well, that's all for today. The Game Vault would like to thank you for watching.